it?
Pharmacist Ben.
Who dances like this?
one of the candidates does.
What's up, AJ? Good to see
How
you.
are you, man?
So you don't like my hair all slicked back like this?
Yeah, you look smooth either way, man. Either way.
All right. I thought,
Welcome,
man.
welcome everybody to Pharmacist Ben's Bites, and it's
Good tunes
fantastic.
there. I like the tunes.
Yeah, that was that's Becca's doing. Becca made that thing, and she says they say they need more photos of you so that we can update this thing and make it even better.
All right. So
But
let's crack-a-lackin'. Good to see you. Do we have people on board?
we got some people on all the channels. We got some folks
showing
up. We got some folks showing up. You know, I had a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Regarding this mitochondrial dysfunction.
Oh my God, is that becoming a thing now? It must be. I keep hearing about it.
You know, this title of the show is Mitochondrial Dysfunction, Another Symptom of the Triangle of Disease.
Bingo. That's the whole thing right there. You know, and there's, there's so many ways the body can break down, but they all come from the same root. You remember the story of the Gordian knot?
Not really.
All right, let me tell you. I'll tell you the story of the Gordian knot. Before I tell you that, what's the most important disease that smart people suffer from?
Overthinkitis.
Exactly. We overthink. We make things so much more complicated than they need to be in terms of restoring ourselves back to health. Not that there's not some joy and interest and fascination with all of the complexities and nuances in the body. There is. It's amazing. I love doing it. I study it every day. Literally every day I read 5 to 10 papers about how the sophistication takes, how the sophistication of biochemistry manifests as health or not health, health or lack of health. It's really fascinating. It's interesting. But from a patient's perspective or even a therapist's perspective, to end the misery and the suffering of chronic degenerative diseases and all the different things that can go wrong in the body, you don't need a lot of steps. You don't even need to understand a lot of stuff. It's basically just plumbing. You know, I always say all disease is cell disease, but all cell disease is preceded by dirty blood, right?
Yes.
All disease is cell disease because it's the cells that are the living components of the body. That's the part that's living. The stuff that comes out of the cells is not living. So you got the cells. The body's made up of cells and stuff. Stuff is called tissue. So you got cells and tissue, right? That's the whole thing. It's the whole shebang. Cells and tissue. The tissue is not alive, and you can't fix a health. The cell oxygenated and detoxified by the blood. Additionally, as the blood is circulating, it's generating electrical charges, a zeta potential, they call it. And this movement of fluid accounts for electricity, accounts for detoxification of cells and feeding of cells and oxygenation of cells. And this is the crux. This is where the disease process takes place. So the only thing we need to figure out if we're not as healthy as we should be is what's going on in the blood. Well, the blood is a closed system. It's within vessels. It's not interacting with any part of the body except for 2 places. One, you can get into it through the skin. That's why you have to be careful with injections. And for the most part, it's coming in from intestinal issues, which means food and digestion. And that's everything. Now, in addition to food and digestion, there's also a second stage in the processing of food, and that involves energy. That involves the transformation of food into energy. And this is why blood sugar is so important. And this is why metabolic syndrome, which you know about, and Becca and doctors wrote a book about, affects so many different systems. Pretty much every system, really, because every system depends on energy. So the first step, the food gets broken down in the digestive system. The second step, the broken down food is transformed into energy. That's the 2 steps. First 2 points in the triangle disease, food and metabolism, or food and energy, we'll say. The mitochondria are the place inside the cell where the breakdown components of food get converted, specifically the fats and the sugars, get converted into energy. They call them the powerhouses of the cell. But these things are so fascinating, mitochondria. For example, mitochondria used to be independent entities, and they had their own DNA. They have their own genetic coding, mitochondrial DNA. You may have heard that on CSI. Sometimes they'll test mitochondrial DNA. So mitochondria have their own DNA. That's kind of amazing, right? Cells have DNA, but these substructures within cells, about 100 to 1,000, sometimes even 10,000 mitochondria within cells, they have their own DNA. They're like their own creatures. And they indeed started as their own creatures. Cells, there's two kinds of cells. You've got primitive cells, which are like bacteria, and you have advanced cells, which are animals, plants and animals. The primitive bacteria they call pro for primitive, prokaryote. A karyote is the Latin term for cell. So prokaryotes are primitive cells, ancient cells, have been around for 3.5 billion years. And then you have eukaryotes. EU means good, advanced. Prokaryotes primitive, like bacteria. Eukaryotes like good cells or advanced cells like us. Advanced cells are very complex. Prokaryotes have no mitochondria, which means prokaryotes cannot produce energy in that same way that eukaryotes do, and this is why they don't have the same kind of they don't have the same kind of advanced and complex behaviors that eukaryotes do. Eukaryotes are very complex cells. It's thought that many billions of years ago, several billions of years ago, there were bacteria that merged with prokaryotes, and via their merging, they became eukaryotes. These bacteria, prokaryotes cannot process oxygen. Bacteria cannot process oxygen like eukaryotes can. Eukaryotes became oxygen processors by this merging that took place between these ancient two types of bacteria. It's thought that mitochondria are the end results of these old bacteria that merged, the merging bacteria. And today it's thought that the eukaryotes are a combination of the prokaryotes plus what used to be a type of bacteria, which are now what we call mitochondria. And this is what allowed for the great advances of eukaryotes and animals and all of the wonderful things that these eukaryotes do. It's this merging. But because mitochondria originated as independent organisms, they still maintain their own DNA. It's almost like we have a foreign invader inside of our cells. Not really an invader, but a foreign visitor inside of our cells. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this makes mitochondria extremely fascinating. They have their own genetics. There's no other organism or organelle that has its own genetics. So mitochondria are incredibly important is the bottom line here. They're also very fascinating. You're hearing a lot about mitochondrial dysfunction for good reason. The biggest problem we had for eons as human beings was getting enough calories, undernourishment, right? Today, our biggest problem is the exact opposite. It's overnourishment, over calories, over energizing. And this creates a burden, a stress on the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the structures inside a cell that convert the food into energy. We got way too much food. So mitochondria are freaking out. They're burnt out. They're overloaded. And this is one of the things that happens with mitochondrial dysfunction is you get an overloading of mitochondria. Plus, the mitochondria, they're processing energy. So they're at the quantum level, the tiniest levels, they're producing energy. So there's lots of sparks of energy that are flowing off. And, anytime you have energy production, you have sparks. The mitochondria are susceptible to sparks. So in addition to now being stressed from being over-energized, you have excess sparks because the more energy, the more raw materials coming into the mitochondria, the more sparks they're going to be. Think of a mitochondria like a factory, like a transforming factory. Food goes, and I'm being very simplistic here. So if you're a biochemist out there, I do know that this is not really food that's happening, but simplistically, food goes into the mitochondria, energy comes out, right? If you have a whole bunch of food coming in, that puts a burden on the mitochondria and it creates more sparks. And so today we have a problem that you're hearing about called mitochondrial dysfunction. And this mitochondrial dysfunction is, there are supplement companies, healthcare professionals, functional medicine people who are focusing on how you can fix the mitochondria. But and everybody listening to this video knows, you can't fix the mitochondria. You gotta take care of the cause of the mitochondrial dysfunction, which is the over-energy, the over-nourishment, the over-calorization. And this over-energy, over-calorization, over-nourishment is the end result of how we eat. Mitochondrial dysfunction is largely an eating problem. There's other things probably that are involved too. But for the most part, it's an eating problem. We eat too much. We over-energize. So yes, you're right. It comes down to the triangle of disease, the first 2 points in the triangle, all the 3 points in the triangle of disease. So I love talking about mitochondria. They're super fascinating, very interesting. Unless you're a biochemist and you're really interested in this kind of stuff, you don't need to know any of this stuff. If you're sick, if you have get migraine headaches, or you have osteoporosis or cancer or whatever you have, you're not going to get better by fixing your mitochondria. You can't go eat at McDonald's and not nutritionally supplement and live a stressful lifestyle and smoke and drink and do all the things human beings do and say, I'm going to fix my mitochondria. That's crazy. So unless you're a chemist or a researcher, or you just like this kind of stuff, you don't need to know about that. You just need to go back to the triangle of disease. And that's the whole message here. You know, we love to overthink, and in a way, I don't want to say it's done intentionally, but what ends up happening is we get disempowered because we're like, how the heck am I going to understand all these biochemical reactions and biochemical phenomena? I don't, there's no way. I'm just a regular person. You know, I'm going about my life. I can't study molecular biology and try to figure out what's going on in my DNA and my mitochondria and my metabolism and what's going on inside with all the biochemical reactions that are happening inside a cell. It's overwhelming. And what it does is not only disempowers us, it empowers the scientists. It empowers the professionals. It empowers the machine, the medical machine. Some people say the medical mafia. It empowers them and disempowers us. What we're trying to do is put the power back where it belongs, which is right in our laps. We need to take our power back, and that's really what this is about. And we take our power back not by trying to manipulate the mitochondria, but by eating better, supplementing, reducing your sugar intake, making sure you're lowering cortisol by relaxation strategies and breathing and meditation and spirituality and all the things we know we have to do. So yeah, I can talk about mitochondria. I love talking about mitochondria, but from a health perspective, from a reversal of disease perspective and an enhancing of longevity perspective, it doesn't matter. You work on your food, you reduce your calories. And this is one of the reasons why, by the way, why calorie reduction leads to an extended lifespan. And why calorie reduction is one of the most powerful strategies you can use to reduce inflammation and the end results or the symptoms of chronic degenerative disease. Calorie restriction with optimum nutrition. We call it the Cron diet. Calorie restriction, optimum nutrition is one of the most powerful things you could do, not only to prevent degenerative disease and to extend your lifespan, but even to reverse it if you're dealing with it.
Okay, I've had a question in my mind. How would someone reduce the amount of sugar they intake? Like
lots of ways.
If they've constantly crave cake.
Okay. Well, first of all, how do you reduce your sugar intake? You reduce your sugar intake. That's how you do it. So that's the first thing. But what you're talking about is how do you hack into your sugar cravings, right? And there's a couple ways to do it. One of the best ways is with amino acids, and actually with protein in general. Protein gets turned into sugar pretty efficiently. It's a process called gluconeogenesis. Gluco means glucose, like sugar. Neo means new. Genesis means the origination of it. So gluconeogenesis is a new way of originating sugar. The old way of originating sugar is through the intake of sugar or the intake of fat. The new way of originating sugar is through protein. It's another way of making sugar. But protein gets turned into sugar much slower. I should say protein gets turned into energy much slower than sugar gets turned into energy. Sugar gets turned into energy very quickly. Fat gets turned into energy a little bit slower, and that's why fat's better as a source of energy than sugar. But protein gets turned into energy very, very slowly. So it gives you slow energy, and the body likes slow. The body doesn't like fast. The body likes slow. You ever see those people in the park doing this?
Tai Chi.
Tai Chi. Yes. When you're slow, the body relaxes. The body calms down when it's slow. You don't want to give the body lots of stuff. It freaks out when there's lots of stuff. There's chaos. Do you ever have 100 things to do and the phone's ringing off? You know, in the pharmacy, we have the phones ringing off the hook and we're helping people and we're filling scripts and we're doing all this stuff. You go crazy. You ever had that situation? I had a day like that this morning where everything's going, this, dun. You know, this person needs this and the phone rings here and I got to make this product and this going on. You go nuts. It's not a good, it doesn't feel good. From a cellular perspective, that's what's happening to our bodies. It's like a person trying to, you ever try to be a one-armed paper hanger. You know, it's a very stressful situation. Protein gives the body slow energy, much preferred source of energy, but it gives it energy. So you get the benefits of energy without that spike. So the first way to reduce your protein intake or reduce your sugar intake or hack into your sugar cravings is to eat more protein. Specifically, there are amino acids that can help with sugar cravings. One of the best is called, or one of the most important, maybe the most important, is glutamine, which you'll find in high protein foods. The TMR shake is not only a great source of glutamine, but it's also a great source of whey protein. It's one of the best sugar, anti-sugar supplements or sugar anti-sugar craving nutrients you could ever use. TMR shake. All right. Also Fit Shake probably too, but I love the TMR shake. It tastes delicious. Have you had the TMR shake?
No, I haven't had any shakes.
Delicious. Get it with almond milk and put a banana in there. Oh my God. Like a dessert. So good. Longevity is doing all this thing with shakes now. Have you noticed this? The new shakes? There's all these new shakes that are coming out.
I don't know, birthday cake and
cake. There's going to be a mint julep shake coming out. And Michelle's going crazy with the shakes. She's loving the shakes.
All right. So Annette here on YouTube is asking, she's got osteoporosis and she's been on longevity for 2 years, the Mighty 90 and OsteoFX, and she's still dealing with her osteoporosis.
Oh my God. Longevity products don't work. Oh my God, they must not work.
Slap the back of your hand for saying that.
Oh my God, they don't work. I still have my. No, I'm just kidding you.
Because I had a cracked hip. And my cracked hip was fixed pretty in quick stead.
Well, osteoporosis is a sign of degeneration. It's not a disease or an illness. It's a symptom of bodily degeneration. One of the most dramatic and problematic aspect of the aging process, the part that we hate the most, is deterioration of the connective tissue. Quick digression, just take a step back here. The body's made of 4 types of stuff. It's a composite. Body's a composite of 4 types of stuff. I say stuff, really tissue. Sometimes the word tissue is intimidating. It sounds all biological and science, so we'll call it stuff. So the body's made of 4 kinds of stuff / tissue. You've got the bulk of the body, and then the body's coated and it's electrified. The coating of the body is called epithelial tissue. The electrification is called electrification stuff is called nervous tissue. And then the bulk of the body, what I call the flesh robot, is made up of steak. What are you eat steak, right? You eat steak, it's got 2 parts to it, right? Those 2 parts are the stuff you eat and the stuff that's around the stuff you eat. The stuff that you eat is the muscle tissue. When we eat a steak, we're eating the muscle tissue. That's the red. It's the stuff everybody likes, is the muscle tissue. And then within the muscle tissue, you got white stuff flecked inside, marbling, right? That's called connective tissue. A steak is a cross-section of the flesh robot of a cow. You take the flesh robot, which is the stuff underneath the epithelial tissue that's coated without the nervous tissue. You ever see the bodies exhibit? You know, I always talk about the, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The flesh robot is the body's exhibit. That's the connective tissue and the muscle tissue. The most profound and problematic aspect of the aging process is deterioration of the connective tissue. This is what freaks everybody out. This is why people don't want to get old, because the connective tissue deteriorates. So the pain and the loss of movement and the heart disease and the vascular dysfunction and the ruptures and the hernias and the scoliosis and the hunched over appearance and the worst, the wrinkles and the thinning skin and the laxity, these are all manifestations of connective tissue deterioration. And the sine qua non, the very essence of anti-aging is building the connective tissue. And in fact, before Doc was the mineral doc, he was the connective tissue doc. He's been talking about the connective tissue. And his first, I'm pretty sure it was his first formulation was the pig pack. which is a connective tissue building supplement, or actually a couple connective tissue building supplements. So anything you can do to build the connective tissue will slow down the aging process. If you're in it, it will help reverse the aging process, and it will prevent the aging. Well, I'll say prevent it, eventually you'll age, but it'll slow it down dramatically. Almost everything we do as a culture, from smoking cigarettes to drinking alcohol to eating lousy food to stressing out to not being not nutritionally supplementing to eating a lot of sugar, deteriorate and destroy the connective tissue. Also, when cells die, or excuse me, or when our excretory organs, specifically our kidneys, don't work as well, we start to accumulate acid. Acid will also deteriorate connective tissue. So between sugar and toxicity and acid and stress and malnourishment and over-energizing and poor mental and emotional and spiritual strategies, we destroy, or we deteriorate, or we're responsible for the degeneration of our connective tissue, and this is what accounts for the aging process. Osteoporosis, osteo means bone, porosis means porosity, is a description, it's a word that describes degeneration of bone. Bone is connective tissue. So it's the same thing. Bone is, osteoporosis is deterioration of the connective tissue called bone. So you can't fix the bone. You can't fix degeneration of connective tissue. You can't fix degenerated tissue. You cannot repair degenerated tissue. What you can do is you can stimulate the production of new tissue, of healthy tissue. As far as the bones go, they're a specific kind of connective tissue that is remodeled. The remodeling process involves breaking up old bone and building new bone, and this is constantly happening. As we're sitting here today, old bone is being destroyed and new bone is being built up. There are specific cells that eat old bone. They process old bone and then use the materials to build new bone. And there are other cells that build bone. The bones that destroy, that eat old bone or destroy old bone are very important because they get rid of the weak stuff. Right? If your bone is weak and your bone cells are weak and fragile, you want to get rid of them. So you want to replace them with new ones, right? Your bone tissue, I should say. Your bone tissue is weak and fragile. You want to get rid of it. This is very important. Remodeling of the bone is how we assure a constant supply of new, strong bone. Does this make sense? Do you follow me?
Yes, absolutely.
Right? All connective tissue is remodeled. This is a very, very, very important biological function. So you don't have old stuff, old weak tissue. So isn't that cool how the body prunes out the old tissue and builds new tissue? This is an amazing thing. The cells that destroy the tissue are called osteoclasts. The cells that build the tissue are called osteoblasts. These are the two types of bone cells, osteoclasts and osteoblasts. So why is this important? Well, I said earlier how there's no drugs that can build bone. So you go to the doctor, you're not going to get a drug that builds bone. And there's so many things, so many ways we interact with the medical model in this kind of mindless way. We go to the doctor even though they can't do anything. We just keep going. So what do they give you if you go to the doctor and he says, oh, you have osteoporosis, low bone mineral density? First of all, what should he be doing? He should be saying, eat more protein, stop eating your sugar, and go out and exercise and make sure you're breathing and take your Mighty 90 essential nutrients. But they don't say that. What they do is they give you a drug that poisons the osteoclast. What does the osteoclast do? It remodels the bone. It destroys the old bone. So the thinking is, the pharmacomedical thinking is, if we poison the osteoclast, we won't lose bone. But the problem is, it's the old bone. Yeah. You need to have it out. Now, there are some newer drugs now that will stimulate the osteoblasts, but you don't want to be stimulating osteoblasts pharmacologically. You don't want to do anything pharmacologically unless you have no other choice. if you're in agony and you're in pain, they just extracted your tooth, you got a root canal, or you just broke your leg, or you're doing surgery. Yeah, pain pills. Praise Jesus for pain pills. Okay? I don't know if you've ever had surgery, but if you had surgery 200 years ago, they would have 5 big guys holding you down while they cut off your leg, or they give you a bullet to bite, right? Or they give you some Jack Daniels or whatever, they had bourbon or whatever they had back then. Can you imagine what that was like? Can you imagine what surgery was like in the Middle Ages? Literally, they would hold you down while they sawed. Right? And I don't care if it was your brain or your genitals or whatever, they would be sawing and they'd be holding you down. So there are times you need drugs. I'm very glad we have certain classes of drugs, but for building things, for getting you stronger, there ain't no drugs that do that. All drugs work by shutting things down. That's why they're called anti-arrhythmics or anti-inflammatories or beta blockers or proton pump inhibitors. They inhibit, they suppress, they block, they anti. That's how drugs work. But it doesn't matter, because if you have osteoporosis, what's causing it? Number 1, acidity. So you support the body so it's not producing too much acid. Number 2, sugar. You reduce your sugar intake. Number 3, malnourishment. You start taking in nutrients. The most important nutrients for building bone are going to be collagen building nutrients. So you get on the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack. The beautiful thing, by the way, about building collagen and connective tissue using nutrition is not only do you build your bone, you also prevent wrinkles. You also build cartilage, so you prevent or you reverse arthritis. You also strengthen your fascia inside your body, so you don't get ruptures, you don't get hernias, and you don't get prolapses. You also strengthen the skeleton. The heart sits on a connective tissue skeleton, so you strengthen the heart. You also improve the vascular functioning, blood vessel functioning. You make the blood vessels stronger, and that's the beauty of nutrition. You take your Healthy Bone and Joint Pack for your bone and joints, you get less wrinkles. You get a better cardiovascular system. You get stronger bones and you get better fascia. And all of the connective tissue is supported by nutritional supplementation. You take Boniva or Fosamax, that doesn't happen. In fact, Fosamax and Boniva, these older osteoclast inhibitors, they call them bisphosphonates, they are awful. Super toxic. One of the most toxic or one of the most nefarious or evil of the side effects is something called necrosis of the jaw, where your jaw, it's not good. And that's a known side effect of some of these bisphosphonate drugs. So the way you take care of osteoporosis to help to answer this gal's question is by eating more protein. Collagen's protein, of course, collagen peptides, whey protein, collagen powder, gelatin. All of these are forms of collagen that will build connective tissue. You make sure that you're using minerals, not only calcium, but calcium is important, but also zinc and strontium and magnesium play roles in bone health. Essential fatty acids, EFAs, your ultimate EFAs, turn on the genetics of bone building. And then there's one more thing I was going to tell you. I forgot what it was already. I forgot what the last thing was, but exercise, weight-bearing exercise is all. Oh, yeah, I remember the last one. Weight-bearing exercise is also important. And the single most important nutrient for building bone, nobody ever talks about for building bone, is bingo. How'd you know that? That's good.
Because I follow you, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you. Good for you, because most people don't know that. Vitamin C is such a fascinating vitamin because it's so important for so many things, but especially for building connective tissue. You cannot build connective tissue without vitamin C. Vitamin C is the key that turns on the connective tissue machinery, connective tissue building machinery. You can't make collagen without vitamin C. But because most of us, present company excluded, of course, most Americans and most medical professionals dose ourselves or dose patients based on what's called the RDAs, most people are way deficient in vitamin C because the RDAs are not designed to give you enough nutrients to make your collagen and connective tissue super strong. They're designed to give you enough vitamin C so your connective tissue doesn't deteriorate. If you're happy just not deteriorating, that's great. Then do your RDAs. But if you want to be super strong and you want to thrive and you want to have amazing health and you want to access the 120-year long or 120-year genetic allotment of life, that's what we're supposed to be, is 120 years old, you need way more than the RDAs. And that's one of the reasons why longevity supplements are so amazing, and especially this one right here, Beyond Tangy Tangerine.
Do you happen to like the Beyond Tangy Tangerine?
Dude. Get my BTT right now. What are you talking about?
Okay, so now I got a couple questions here. So,
and reduce sugar intake. Sugar Sorry, let me interrupt you. Sugar combines with protein to form something called AGEs. AGE stands for advanced glycosylated end product, but it spells out age. So glycosylation of collagen and protein is one of the ways we get osteoporosis, as well as deterioration of connective tissue in other parts of the body. Glycation is the end result of too much sugar. So reducing your sugar intake is very important. And also, as I mentioned earlier, weight-bearing exercises. You know, when astronauts go to space, they have to exercise. They give them exercise bikes in their space shuttle, right? Because in outer space, there's no gravity. So guess what happens to your bones when you're in no gravity long enough? They start to deteriorate. So today, or last 50 years or so, when astronauts go to space, they're on exercise bikes in space to make sure that their bones don't deteriorate in the zero gravity conditions. So pressure on the bone, really mechanical pressure I'm talking about, on the bone generates electrical charges that stimulate growth. Electricity will stimulate growth. You ever hear of a TENS unit?
No.
You never had knee surgery or leg surgery or anything like that, I take it. When you have knee surgery, you're lucky. It's pretty miserable. When you have knee surgery or leg surgery or any kind of surgery, they'll give you a TENS unit to put on the area where you had the surgery or where the bone was broken or where the ligaments were torn. A TENS unit is a box that generates electrical pulses to stimulate the growth of tissue. TENS stands for transcutaneous electrical neural stimulation, TENS, a TENS unit. And these TENS units generate electrical charges, and electrical charges stimulate growth. But you can generate electrical charges through pressure via a phenomenon known as piezoelectricity. Piezo, P-I-E-Z-O, means pressure. Piezoelectricity is the electricity that's generated through pressure. So walking, jumping up and down, doing squats or leg presses, any kind of physical exercise will generate piezoelectricity for the bones.
Interesting enough, just as a quick aside, when basketball players want to increase their jumping ability, they wear ankle weights.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Increases...
Well, that's not quite piezoelectricity, but that way when they jump, they're jumping with more weight on the bottom of their body. So it's like a workout. It's resistance training, basically. Yeah. It's an interesting thing to do. I wouldn't advise regular folks to do it. You got to be a little bit strong. You can put a little bit. It could put too much resistance on your joints, especially on your knees if you're not an athlete. But for athletes, it's great. Yeah. When we used to play baseball, we'd put a donut on the bat. Did you ever play baseball when you were a kid? Remember the donuts?
Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah.
Why would you put a donut on the bat? Because then they take the donut off and you got way more bat speed. So if you're practice jumping with weights on your ankles, you take the weights off, boom, you can jump out of the gym.
Which is, right? Yes, that's the phenomenon. That's what happens. Yeah. All right. So my question is just nutritionally, you mentioned some things, but for the osteoporosis, but can you put it into terms of longevity products? I mean,
a healthy bone and joint. It couldn't be simpler. Healthy bone and joint pack.
Okay, but what about the MSM? Where does that play a role?
Yeah, there's I call them satellite products. Remember the hub and spoke. You have the hub, which is healthy bone and joint pack, and then there's some spoke products. Yes, probably the OsteoMag, Mineral Toddy, the MSM, Ultimate MSM, CFX, Zinc FX. I'm probably missing a couple. Let's think real quick. You might want to, if you really want to go all out, I would do digestive support to make sure you're absorbing all these nutrients, I-26 and such, if there's any underlying digestive problems. And then the healthy bone and joint pack, healthy blood sugar pack, or at least the sweeties, because of the glycation as an anti-glycating strategy. Let me think if there's anything else that's important. I mean, a TMR shake or any whey protein, collagen peptides.
Okay, couple more questions here. Becca mentioned that she knows someone wanting to know about the birth defect leading to cyclopism.
The birth defect leading to cyclopism. I don't know what she wants to know, but remember, Doc says there's no such thing as a genetic disease, right? Mm-hmm. And so obviously birth defects happen, right? And I don't know about, they're all basically the same. There's something affects the genes as the fetus is developing in the womb. There's lots of things that can affect the genes as the fetus is developing in the womb. For example, if you're smoking cigarettes, that's going to affect the fetus. That's going to affect the genetics of the fetus. If you're under a lot of stress, that's going to affect the genetics of the fetus. If you're malnourished, that's going to affect the genetics of the fetus. If you're secreting histamine or toxicity in the bloodstream, that's going to affect the genetics of the fetus. So there's lots. If you eat a lot of sugar, that can affect the genetics of the fetus. So good living, basically, supplementing, eating correctly, relaxing, all of these are the ways you prevent genetic defects of the fetus. Now, the genetic defects can show up as cystic fibrosis. They can show up as muscular dystrophy. They can show up as all kinds of things. Cyclopism or inborn errors of metabolism. There's all kinds of different ways that genetic dysfunction or genetic mutations can show up. I don't know if mutation is the right word, but
deficiency.
Poor genetics can show up in a fetus and then in a baby, but it all involves the same thing: the toxicity or the malnourishment or the hypoxia inside a womb. Remember, there's only three things that can go wrong with a cell. They can be starved, malnourished. They can be suffocated, hypoxic or low oxygen, or they can be toxic. Starvation, suffocation, and toxicity. Those are the only three things that go wrong with a cell. Likewise, that's a cell in a fully formed human being, but it's also a cell in a developing fetus. Starvation, suffocation, and toxification. Which genes are affected doesn't really matter in terms of what caused the problem. That's kind of a random thing, or maybe it's not random. Maybe some genes are more susceptible than others based on history. I don't know the answer to that, but it's all caused by starvation, suffocation, and toxification. Again, don't overthink. Starvation, there's a few basic principles. All disease is cell disease. All cell disease is preceded by dirty blood. The only thing that go wrong with the cell is starvation, suffocation, and toxification. So if you work on the digestive system and the blood sugar system and the adrenal thyroid axis, you make sure you get the right nutrients, you make sure you're breathing correctly, and you've reduced or you've eliminated any kind of chronic inflammation, and then you keep the system clean, you're going to be fine. The body wants to be healthy. The body wants to heal. If you're not fine, starvation, suffocation, toxification, and then the triangle of disease. Address all of those points.
Okay, so we have some folks out on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook and Twitter.
Hey,
Ruth Ellen is helping us.
Hi, Ruth Ellen.
And then we have Annette and Dave and Eric.
Hey,
and
everybody.
Our boy Joe and Bruce.
Oh, wow.
And, we have a number of
nice
folks.
Crowd.
True Health Solutions. And then
who is True Health Solutions? I haven't seen them around lately.
You know what? We know that True Health is part of the family. I just forget exactly who True Health is. Okay, but our buddy Eric in Kenya is asking.
Eric in Kenya or Eric and Kenya?
Eric lives in Kenya.
Eric lives in Kenya. Wow.
Yeah, he's up late.
Impressive.
He's up late. He's a diehard.
Hey.
So why are additives such as titanium dioxide, polyvinyl pyrrolidine, and purified talc added to supplements?
Polyvinyl pyrrolidine. I don't know if I've ever seen PVP in a supplement. PVP is sticky. I don't know if I've ever seen that in a supplement, but that has a sticky quality. I use it sometimes in skincare when I want to make something that sticks to the skin, like for surgical procedures or for healing. Sometimes iodine is put in PVP. PVP is, I don't think it's ingested. I'm pretty sure it's not ingestible. It's usually it's in some topical nutrition, some topical supplements that are supposed to stick on the skin. PVP
he's saying he's saying he's heard that it's carcinogenic.
It could be. It could be. I don't know that people eat PVP though.
Okay,
The
but
other
if
one
you
was
put it on topically, is it going to be a problem?
no, it probably won't. It's a very big molecule. It sits on the surface of the skin. That's why it's used. For example, there's a PVP is used with iodine for a surgical solution when you need the iodine to stick on the wound. So PVP is a kind of sticky stuff. Like I say, I make masks with it, and sometimes I use it in topical products that I want to adhere to the skin. It has an adhering quality to it. Talc, and what was the other one?
It's.
I already said the other one was. I don't know if talc is added to internal nutrition. Talc is associated with cancer because it's associated with lung cancer. In fact, there's a lot of class action lawsuits against Johnson & Johnson for their baby powder, which contains talc.
And then titanium dioxide.
Titanium dioxide makes things white. And so for attractive reasons, for marketing reasons, when you want your pill to be white or you want your powder to be white, titanium dioxide is added. I don't know that it's carcinogenic, although, and let's talk about that carcinogenic thing first. Carcinogenesis, the stimulating of cancer, strictly works, or most of the time, not always, most of the time works by duress, by putting a burden on the cell, keeping the cell or the cell from being able to do what it can do. So yes, talc interferes with cell chemistry in the lungs. So if you breathe talc, it can be associated with cancer. PVP is pretty much just topical. Titanium dioxide is it's a sunblock, actually. It's used in sunblock products. It's like a pigment, and its pigment properties are leveraged for manufacturers to make their products white. So titanium dioxide is sometimes found in skincare products if you want to be white, or it's found in pills or capsules where you want the powder to be white. It's just for attractive reasons. It has no functionality. I don't know necessarily that it's going to cause cancer, but it's not going to do you any good. I never heard of PVP or talc being ingested. I may be wrong about that, but I haven't heard of it.
Okay, so is there a particular something that you'd like the people to know? Is there something that you want?
Anything I want people to know?
Anything you want the people to know.
Yes, that's a lot of things. One of the things is don't overthink. If you're sick, don't overthink. Second thing is, if you have a chronic degenerative disease, there's nothing a doctor's going to do for you. There's nothing they can do. There's no tools in the medical magical bag of tricks to help you with a chronic degenerative disease. These are lifestyle things. And don't blame the doctor. And I say this all the time, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's really important. Don't blame the doctor. It's not his fault. They're good people. They make mistakes. Okay, yes, they make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. They're not perfect, but they're not bad people. They're really good people. I know a lot of doctors. I have a lot of friends who are physicians, and they're, by and large, really good people who got into the business to make a positive difference. The problem is we're asking them to do things that are not in their skill set. They're not in their wheelhouse. A doctor's skill set is to fix things that are broken, not to change metabolism. If you have a broken bone, you get it stitched up or you get it repaired. A doctor is necessary. You don't take vitamin C when you break your leg. You don't get on the healthy bone and joint pack and expect your leg to get repaired. You have the doctor repaired, and then you take the healthy bone and joint pack. So when something needs to be fixed or stitched up or put back on, doctors are amazing. Heroic medicine is what this is called. It's amazing. But if you ask the doctor to take care of your diabetes, or your autoimmune disease, your psoriasis, or the cyst that's on your ear, whatever it is, he can't do that. That's not in their wheelhouse. You can have the best carpenter in the world that can make the best cabinets in the world. But if you ask him to fix your car, you say, oh, my engine's messed up. And you go to a carpenter, you say, I'm a carpenter. What are you going to me for? Or he'll try to fix your car, fix your engine with his hammer and his nail. And he's going to destroy your engine. And then you're going to sue him and you're going to be mad at him. Because he's going to say, I'm sorry, I'm a carpenter. I got a hammer. That's what I do. Why'd you come to me? Don't blame the doctor. They're good people. Now, the model, the pharmacomedical paradigm, that's messed up. That's a paradigm that says everything can be repaired, it can be fixed with drugs or surgery or ablation or radiation. That's not right. That's not fair to do to your fellow man. The pharmacomedical model, those commercials I see on TV for Dupixent and Jardiance and, I don't even know all these, they call them biologics now. That is mean. That's misanthropic. That's anti-human being. That's not right. But don't blame the individual doctor. It's the paradigm. The model that says it's okay to charge somebody $10,000 for a biologic drug to shoot down the immune system, which is literally how they work, to get rid of your eczema. When the immune system is activated because you ate the wrong food or because your digestive system's not working. That's a problem. So that's another thing I want people to know. Don't blame the doctor. The model's messed up, but it's not the doctor. Yeah.
Is sodium benzoate Tony wants to know on Facebook, is sodium benzoate by vitamin C bad?
Sodium benzoate can react with vitamin C to form benzene. Benzene is a very nasty chemical. It's used in dry cleaning. But let me tell you about benzene. I worked for Blistex. You know that, right? And one of my jobs when I was working for Blistex, I was low man on the totem pole. So one of my jobs was to wash the beakers and wash the dishes. And I'll tell you what, the way they make Blistex, it's impossible to get that stuff off the glass beakers. So what I would do is I would go get the benzene from the lab and I put it in the beaker, and man, benzene will clean anything. And that's one of the problems is it'll clean your cell membranes and it'll clean your nucleus, the nucleus of your cell, and it'll destroy your DNA. And benzene is majorly carcinogenic. Benzene can be formed by a reaction between vitamin C and sodium benzoate. So yes, that can be a problem. I don't know how significant, I don't know, but it can produce benzene, which is very carcinogenic, dry cleaning. Benzene is dry cleaning fluid. It's very effective though for getting fatty material, oily material, sticky material off of glass. That's for sure. You can clean your mirrors with it real well.
I can't believe they left you in the lab to start.
They left me in the lab with the benzene.
Imagine the things that you were doing.
I did all kinds of things. I hear something funny. This was the 80s, the early 80s. And the lab, the Blistex lab, Dr. Jones, who was the guy who invented Blistex, and it was his lab. He was a pharmacist. He's a medicinal chemist, and he has all these old, from the 1920s and 1930s, herbs. And one of them was marijuana. And this was in the 80s. And he had this big, big vat of 50-year-old marijuana in the lab. And I was tempted.
I'm sure you did.
No, I didn't. I was tempted. No, I was only 20. I was like 22 or something. And I was tempted, but it looked so bad. It was 50 years old. But yeah, it was huge. It was this huge glass vat thing. I don't even know how to describe it. It was filled with 50-year-old marijuana.
That's something else. That's something else. Okay, so I guess we can wrap up. Mary Mack is on with us, and
hi, Mary Mack. Hi, everybody.
And the other name on when we said that True Health Solutions is our buddy Albert in South Africa.
Oh, Albert. Yeah, Albert. What's up, Uncle Albert?
Yeah. Cousin Albert in South Africa. So people are staying up late around the world to catch your show.
I love it. All right. Well, this will be recorded too, so you can review it.
This is recorded, and I guess my last question is there something to fear, given that today is Friday the 13th?
Oh, do you know why? Do you know why Friday the 13th got a reputation for being? Do you know the story?
I've heard different stories.
I'll tell you the story.
Okay, and then I'm gonna fact check you.
Okay, well, there's some religion involved, so I don't want to offend anybody.
I'm gonna fact check you.
Okay, you can fact check me. You can do it right now. 13 is the number of the woman. Do you know why 13 is the number of the woman?
No.
Because women there are 13 moons in a year, and 13 times 28, or 365 divided by 28 is 13. So there's 13 moons in a year, 13 menstrual cycles in a year. So 13 represents the female, numerologically speaking. Friday is Freya's day. Do you ever wonder where the names of the week come from?
Well, yeah, I'm familiar because
they come from astrology.
Yeah.
Moon Day, Tuesday. Tuesday was a Norse god.
Mm-hmm.
Woden. Wednesday is Woden.
Yeah.
Thor's Day, the god Thor. And then Freya's Day. Freya is the.
I thought it was Frigga.
It might be Frigga. You know this, right? It might be Frigga, but its G is pronounced in Norwegian is Fry. So Freya's day, Frigga's day, right, is the god. Freya represents Venus. So Friday is Venus's day. Saturday is Saturn's day. Sunday is Sun's day. Monday's Moon's day, like that. So anyway, Freya's day was Venus's day. So Freya's day, Venus's day, the 13th, the number of the woman, was considered a day of fertility. Friday the 13th was a day the pagans, the Druids, the Celts, used to have lots of crazy sex in the fields because they considered it to be a sign of fertility. And so they would have lots of wild, orgiastic sex in the fiends. This
is a family show. I'm just joking.
Well, I think families have sex too. How do you think families start? You know, how do you think families are made? So anyway, so when the Romans conquered Britain and Ireland, and it wasn't the Romans, it was the church really. They brought Catholicism with them, and they couldn't have that. You couldn't have people, you know, having crazy sex in the fields every Friday. So they made that into they turned that into a bad day, into a cursed day, in order to keep the pagans from going wild on Friday the 13th, and it eventually developed into, you know, as legends do, it developed into a superstition. Friday the 13th, but just Google Google the origination of Friday the 13th.
Amazing, because I heard a totally similar story. So,
what did you hear?
Something to do with Freemasons, so the Knights Templar, and the day that the Pope said that they had to be beheaded.
I know it was. I think this guy, I forgot his name. The Knights Templar, the head of the Knights Templar, was killed on Friday the 13th, I believe. Yeah, and I forgot the guy's name, who was the head of the Knights Templar, but he was kind of a rabble rouser. And first he was used, but the Knights Templar were first used by the church. This is getting into a little bit of conspiracy kind of stuff.
Yeah,
first the Knights Templar were used by the church, but then this guy, I forgot the guy's name. He's a very famous figure in history. And he decided he was going to be more powerful than the Pope, and of course that won't fly. You know. But I don't know if we want to get into too much religion here.
No, but you know what? You know, Ben, it just demonstrates your worldliness and your wealth of information.
Well, yeah, I like history. I'm sort of an amateur historian, and that's kind of why I love Dr. Wallach. What I love most about Dr. Wallach is he's the same way. Like when you read his books, he brings in history and sociology and anthropology and geology and nutrition and anatomy and biochemistry and medicine. He brings it all together in this incredible weave of all these different ideas. And I always found that very, very appealing. That's why I love his books. And that's why I really connected with Dr. Wallach. But yeah, I do like to do that. I do like to bring things in like that.
Interestingly enough, his book Black Gene Lies, I tell people, yeah, it's got to do with nutrition and chemistry, but it's a history book.
It's a history
book. Like there's things in there that, you know, and I consider myself pretty well versed on Black history, but I learned a ton of stuff from reading Black Gene Lies.
Is that right? Is it pretty accurate? Do you recommend it? I haven't read that
More
one.
than accurate.
Nice. Isn't that amazing?
It's insane how detailed this thing goes through American history.
Yeah, he's pretty fascinating guy. Epigenetics is like a whole walkthrough of medical history.
Epigenetic,
yeah. That's my favorite book of Dr. Wallach's. And by the way, the guy's name was Jacques de Molay. Jacques de Molay.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, Pharmacist Ben, I hope today brings you enormous amounts of luck.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for listening in. And we'll be back at you for a DWD, an official DWD. And can you imagine next Friday is going to be September 20th?
Yes,
the
weather's going to change on us pretty rapidly here.
It'll be fall. I think next Friday is fall. When does fall start? 20th?
22nd? 22nd, yeah, 21st, 22nd.
All right.
All right.
Enjoy your weekend, AJ. We'll see you soon. God bless everybody.
Enjoy our outro music.
Okay.